Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Alka Halberg. I am part of the Cohesive Marketing team. I will be assisting the team today as moderator. We will give it another 30 to 60 seconds to allow all the attendees to join us. Great, I think we can start. Hi everyone and welcome to our webinar on the importance of information and data governance for project delivery. We will give you an insight on how you can pave the path to your digital vision through effective governance. Before I hand it over to John and Asito, our hosts for today, I would just like to start with some administrative tasks. Note that this webinar will be recorded and distributed post-webinar. All the attendees are currently set to listen-only mode, but feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat or question box. Should you have any technical questions or problems, please log it with the GoToWebinar technical team in the form of a question mark or help section on the panel itself. Without further ado, let's dive in and hand over to John to introduce our speaker for today. John.
Thank you, Elka, and welcome everyone for accepting my invitation and taking time to join our cohesive webinar series. Today's highlights, as what Elka mentioned, is on the importance of information and data governance in paving the way to digital transformation within your organizations. Our focus is to share insights on real-world use cases and scenarios and why it is important to have a connected, validated, and visible information. Please allow me to now introduce our speaker for today. Our presenter is Neill, Principal Digital Consultant of Cohesive EMEA. Neill served in the British Army before building his career in the construction industry, progressing to become a head of information technology for a UK civil engineering contractor. Now, Neill also worked for the Construction Industry Institute at the University of Austin in Texas and led several technology implementations, pilot projects, proof of concepts on large global capital programs in the US, Europe, Russia, and in the Middle East. He worked on Crossrail project in London as a senior project information manager, and then for EDF Energy as head of information management on the Hinkley nuclear power plant. Lastly, as part of Cohesive, Neill led a national digitalization program for the Ministry of Information or Environment in Lithuania. And since then, Neill supports digital transformation programs and data-driven strategies for the range of clients, including Heathrow Airport, UK National Highways, and Spirit Energy. So without further ado, I now hand over to you, Neill.
Lovely, thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. So when I was asked to do this talk, I did a bit of research around a suitable quotation because every good presentation starts with a quotation. I found this one, which I accept might be a bit obscure to some people. It's actually from an old text from my bachelor's degree course, but I think it nicely sums up my feelings about this often conflicted relationship between promoted technological solutions and what I call, sorry, military expression, the ground truth of what really needs to be done to yield the value from your data and your information. The magic fairy that's sort of cited in this quote, I would sort of couch that as being technology that can, in many cases, pull all your information together in one place. You can consume it. If the data is of poor quality and consistency, then what use is it really, is in reality? Because I would argue that you need basic standards, processes, ways of working, and you need these well established before you add that sort of veneer of automation that technology can bring. So I hope to bring that a little bit to life during the course of my presentation today. So what am I going to cover? And this is not an exhaustive list. It's in no particular order either. It won't be in sequence. So I want to talk about why I think information and data governance is foundational. particularly when you're trying to achieve a digital vision or implement a digital twin. What's the impact if we don't have that in place? I want to give you some key insights from my own experience. I've picked three specific case studies, and then towards the end, and I want to diminish technology in any way, but this is about the management of information, but I want to paint a bit of a high-level picture of how technology could be part of that solution. I particularly like this slide. We talk about this a lot, and as I will keep on saying in this presentation, the key foundations for a digital approach is a robust and effective information and data governance. But what does this mean? Well, we, Cohesive as a company, we often find ourselves in front of clients or potential clients, and we're pitching a digital solution, a technology, or a digital twin approach. And we often sit in there, and I'm sure if you're a client, you've been on the receiving end of this, is that we're painting a picture full of sort of rainbows and unicorns where technology is delivering huge benefits to project design, delivery, operations, you name it. And often the room is full of smiles, because who wouldn't want that future? However, we also have to pitch the message that before any technology can deliver this wonderful future, a lot of work has to be done to get to grips with how your existing information and your existing data is stored, managed, and assured. And this is often when frowns start to develop, because it just isn't sexy. It's hard, it takes time, it requires resource and money. But you have to get your hands dirty with the data, and forward investment in that exercise is absolutely essential. And I'll argue that the extra time and effort that means is well worth it, and it will save a lot of pain and more cost in the long run. I'd also argue, you may say it's tenuously, that the consequences of what I'm talking about here, of inadequate investment in these efforts, is reflected often in industry statistics, an example of which is shown here. And I'm sure you've seen plenty of these kind of numbers thrown out there, but things like 96% of all data goes unused, 30% of our time is spent looking for project data and information, and 30% of E&C companies are using applications that just don't integrate together in a federated way that's useful. So, sorry, this bit is a little bit dry, so I won't spend too much time on it. But the journey often begins with establishing this robust information frame and governance framework. And these frameworks ensure that data is accurate, it's consistent, it's available, and that will form the backbone of your digital strategy or your digital twin implementation. So I'm quickly going to step through 10 key areas of focus. I'm sorry I don't have more time to do this justice. My intention is just to give you the main highlights from each area. But let's start with people. That's always one of my favorite themes. These are your people on the pitch, is the way I often call it. They are there to ensure that your standards, your policies, and your processes are followed. And we often find that clients assume that just because they have good processes, plus a really great relationship with their supply chain, that the good data will just flow. It'll just happen as if by magic. This is often a mistake. You really need to police things. Accept that you can't police everything, but you can at least have the ability to get out there and understand and do spot checks, and you often find that will drive a lot better behaviour with your supply chain and your data suppliers and stakeholders. The second thing is strategy. It's just important and symbolic that your data governance strategy is integral to your overarching strategy of your organisation. Process is a little bit obvious, but your data governance program that you're putting in place needs to establish key data processes for your data management. So that's things like data issue tracking, resolution, data quality monitoring, sharing, and all that good stuff. What goes hand in hand with that is policies, a high level of statements that sort of state some expectations that everybody clearly understands about the outcomes that data is going to do for your organization, and that will influence your habits and your ways of working. Standards, that's often a framework that you can build your data quality policies around. The example I've cited here is ISO 19650, building information management. That's the one we most commonly encounter. And then what you can do is you can use that standard to form the basis of your data rule set for your quality checks, etc. Security in this new world where we're sort of sharing more information, and often that's in the cloud. We need to make sure that's secure and that bad actors don't get their hands on that data. So you need some good policies and some technologies to secure that data. Two sort of a little bit different ones here, but one I quite like is that you need to socialize these things and you need to communicate them. So it's no good having them. I know many companies who spend an awful lot of time and effort in putting policies and standards and security things together, and then they just issue them to the organization. They pop them on the internet, say, there you are, guys, start using them. But if you don't engage with people, get them to want to change, to want to use them and be aware of them, and also have the ability to do it, then it isn't going to happen. So that's your socialization and your communication. Last couple are metrics and KPIs. You need to know what good looks like. You need to have an ability to form a baseline and then track your performance over time. And then finally, and I have left this to the end actually deliberately, is the technology stack. Technology can do an awful lot of this for you, but it would be a mistake for you to assume that it's going to do everything for you. Sorry, as I said, that was probably quite a glib run through of 10 very important things, but I do want to spend more time talking about some real world examples. And the first real world example I wanted to cite here is a new client of ours. It's called Spirit Energy. He's based up in Aberdeen in the north of Scotland, formerly part of what was known as British Gas, then Centrica, and they operate a number of oil and gas facilities in the North Sea and Irish Sea off the coast of the British Isles. And they're now part of this ever-emerging energy transition movement, along with many other major oil and gas companies. And their new Morecambe Net Zero program, or MNZ, or MNZ if you're American, will be a strategic hub for the carbon capture storage industry, or CCS. The commercial operation date for first injection of CO2 into the old wells is 2031, with the final investment targeted in about 2028. So they're well ahead of time. They've got lots of time here to do some thinking. And Spirit Energy need to develop an information management or digital vision. They're calling it digital by design for the program, which includes an articulation of what the digital vision will look like across key delivery timelines. What Spirit Energy are really keen on is what they call right first time approach, and they refer often to what they say no regret interventions. They've seen mistakes made on other programs and they don't want those to happen on their program. Thank you very much. MNZ is a greenfield project, so it's very different to the existing infrastructure they maintain and operate. And as such, they've got a huge opportunity to pioneer a new way of working that could be scaled across their wider organisation over time. What they also recognised was the basic forward investment needed to get to grips with the basic interventions that we were going to recommend, and that's sort of within the first 6 months. And these are there to sort of lay the foundations for their vision and strategy. So namely, what data do they need? Where will it be stored? How will it be prescribed, defined, structured, accessed for those who need it? And unsurprisingly, our recommendations centre around some of the tasks I sort of ran through in that list of 10 things. But for this example, I just wanted to pick out one thing, and that's the set of information and data principles that we recommended to them to lay the ground for these new ways of working. And these will often promote the beneficial behaviours that you need to put these new ways of working in place. So these principles not only need to be defined, laid out, they also need to be socialised and communicated to ensure buy-in. But broadly, they cover things like information management being everybody's responsibility, not just that of one or two departments of functions, information having an accountable owner or accountable owners, information being considered an asset, information having a purpose, it's accessible, it's correctly defined, it's of good quality, and it's secure. So we've created these, but the next step is that these principles need to be communicated and socialized up front to recognize that everybody will be playing their part in the project and working in a different way. And these new behaviors will be fundamental to lever that success over time. So what's the impact if we don't do these things? These are some generic and obvious ones, hopefully. You'll just get uninformed asset investment decisions. You'll have inadequate risk cover and mitigation and management. You run the risk of non-compliance, reputational damage, delays, costs, reduced quality, and compromising your organisational sustainability. But this slide I also particularly like because implementing a digital twin or a digital approach requires solid foundations, and those solid foundations are good data and information governance for several reasons. You want your data to be of good quality, you want it to be consistent, you want to integrate that information from disparate data sources and systems. You need to be compliant to standards, it needs to be secure, it needs to be scalable. So often you're going to start small and then build up from there. And then ultimately what you want to do is yield the benefits of good decision making and predictive analysis of that good quality data that you've got. So you need to build your digital twin on poor foundations. And sorry if I sound like I'm banging the same drum repeatedly. Another example I wanted to cite here is the work we're doing at London Heathrow Airport around what they're calling digital asset delivery. They're an interesting client. They've been through various phases of CapEx phases and OpEx phases and then COVID recovery. But the key here is that asset information is key to their operational efficiency. At Heathrow. It informs decision making at every level of the business, from routine maintenance of existing assets to large scale organisational interventions and construction projects and CapEx programs. But the clarity, reliability and availability of this information directly determines how quickly and accurately these decisions are made. It's therefore vital for Heathrow to implement a definitive and robust approach to asset information management. So we were engaged to produce a 2-year action plan showing how Heathrow can improve digital delivery. And this included enhancing the completeness and quality of their information at the handover stage of capital project delivery to minimise the data wastage that they'd quantified. And it was millions of pounds per year. So we put this into a roadmap. But it basically broadly fitted into 5 areas. And some of these may be new to you, but the first one is cultural change. If you don't recognize that you're moving from point A to B, you're in a change program, so you need support. That it was being done to liberate commercial value, to give accessible data, accessible systems, and to improve the quality of their information requirements. The last case study that I wanted to cite is Irish Rail. We were engaged by this client to produce an information management strategy to match and address an increasing demand from their capital works program. It's about 4 billion euros in the next 10 years. And this involved a rapid discovery phase that we went in, gap analysis and planning, followed by development, documentation and training of their staff to a minimum BIM ISO 19650 processes and standards. And then only after this phase, we've then moved on to the implementation of new data storage systems and tools. It was interesting that the rapid discovery process that we had up front unearthed a number of foundational information and data management issues that needed addressing, and some of them were inadequate existing process, disconnected systems, siloed data and information, and data duplications and lots of quality issues. And then once again, our roadmap for the IM strategy includes some of these basics, or what I would call again, no regret interventions, just to shore up those foundations. So business process changes, data standards, socialization and communication, and then new governance structures and roles and responsibilities and recommendations around that. So finally, I'm just conscious of time here. I want to sort of settle on or finish by looking at technology. And technology can certainly help. And it can help you in a number of ways. It can help you with data discovery, modeling, acquiring data, validating data, putting that data in a good structure and context, and then you've got the benefits of being able to then analyze that data going forward. I'm not going to linger too much on this slide, but this is just to say that we have within Cohesive digital twin capabilities, which is our data-driven approach. Don't worry about the architecture. If you speak to John nicely, he might give you this image as a bit of a takeaway, so we can talk about it in some more detail. But this is just basically showing how, with the right technology, you can acquire data from supplier systems, from your line of business applications. Via connectors, these can be integrated together. We can then store, manage, curate, and then ultimately you can then consume that data and find and use it to best value. So just to wrap up, just one little slide here to sort of talk about a data approach to digital delivery. And I wanted to reinforce the point that technology will only do so much. Don't get seduced by it. It is important, but you can't just go and buy something off the shelf and expect magical results. You won't get it. It will help you connect data, and we have the technologies that can help you do that. It'll validate data. It'll help you visualize the data and ultimately work towards your achieving your vision of that digital twin. But you need to underpin it with the right foundations, and it's augmenting that technology with the right interventions to make sure you get the right results. So that's me concluded from now, but I just wanted to finish and say that I mentioned, I think, the Irish Rail example, and how we got that engagement with Irish Rail was that we conducted what we call one of our value framework workshops. And we're planning to conduct a free value workshop in October for 2 weeks in the APAC region, facilitated by two of my colleagues who are senior digital advisors from the UK. And that workshop is designed to help organisations and people like yourselves with your digital and your organisational transformation journeys. And it's really useful because it will help you identify gaps, assess your state of maturity, and really help you identify and prioritize the needs that you have that will likely are impacting your business or can help your business in the future. And that's around data governance, integration, sustainability, lifecycle information management. So if you're keen to take advantage of this, then please contact John for an overview. He'll be more than happy to sign you up for those events. So I wanted to thank you very much for your time today. Sorry it was so short. Always welcome to have better and deeper and more meaningful conversations with you. But I think I'm going to finish there, hand back to Elke and John, and see if we've got any questions. I think we've got a few minutes, haven't we, guys?
Yes, thank you, Neil, for the insightful presentation. At this stage, we have a number of questions that came in from the audience in the chat box. So I'll give you hand over now the first question to you.
Yep.
Number one, yeah, our systems are in silos and no standard data structure is in place. My systems are not talking to each other, which is difficult for my stakeholders to analyze. What is the best practice for us to start with to implement information governance?
Okay, shall I start with that one? Well, if you want to start implementing information governance where your systems are in silos, which we often find, and I wouldn't say there's no standard, often there's no standard data structure. I think in many cases we do find the basics, but it's just essential to follow best practice, some of the things that I've talked about today. And that will help you guide towards, pardon the pun, a more cohesive and effective governance framework. But just some best practices to consider, and I think probably the place to start is just assess and be honest about your current state. Conduct a thorough assessment, lift the lid on a few things, and be honest about where those siloed systems are, why are they siloed, etc., and identify the gaps. And then start defining your governance goals, develop your framework. Talk about some of the things I've talked today about roles, standardizing your data structures and classifications, data quality measures. But I think also, I'll keep coming back to it, just once you've discovered where you are and you've got a strategy, get people invested in that journey. Consider the people, is what I'd say.
Thank you. Yes, good. Thank you. It's a good that it is important to sometimes accept the reality that where we are, right? And what's the condition of our information governance. The next question that I have for you, Neil, is data quality and integrity is always an issue within our organization, especially as we are also implementing a digital strategy. How can we ensure data is validated when information is visualized in our digital twin platform?
Yeah, I think I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself again, but this is a rubbish in, rubbish out. If I go back to my original quote, if your information, your feedstock data into ultimately what becomes your your digital twin is of poor quality, then how can you rely on the integrity of what you're actually visualizing? You might just end up with a pretty picture that's meaningless. It's not really doing any work for you. It's not satisfying any particular use case. So again, adopt standards, maybe start with technology. So if you've got a common data environment, and what I mean by that, it could just be a document management system that you've got, which is a repository where you can start to put data, organize data, arbitrate its quality before you put it in there. You've got a really good starting point to scale from. So if you've got your validation rules, your data governance, you can use that technology, that document management system, and it may just be, flat files or something like that, but it'll start to give you the disciplines that you need to lay the foundations that you can then scale to get you to the point where you've got a really good lake of data that you can rely on. Your digital twin can be the veneer that's placed on the top, and then you're actually visualizing that data in a way that's meaningful and impactful for you.
Okay, thank you again, Neill. But I think that is all the time do we have at the moment. Else we will be get kicked out of here. Now, we do have a few more questions here on the board, but what we will do is we will send you all a copy of today's sessions and more information regarding the case studies that Neil has shared, together with other questions and answers that has not covered by Neil today. So with that, this is a wrap for today, and in behalf of my team, thank you everyone. Take care, everyone. Elke, any last words?
No, I just want to say thank you, Neil, for the informative session, as well as you, John, for joining us and helping leading this. And yeah, and also and everybody for our attendees for joining and listening to us today. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.